Chapter 1. The Relic. The vastness of the universe is a place of perpetual motion, of ever-changing stars, civilizations, and the slow, inexorable march of time. Yet among the endless corridors of space, there are places where the past lingers like a ghost. The planet Earth was one such place, a forgotten relic, abandoned by the very species that once called it home. It was now but a distant memory, a name uttered only in the most ancient records, lost amidst the stars and forgotten by the galactic civilizations that had risen in its wake. For centuries, Earth had been nothing more than a fragment of a story, a tragedy of extinction and self-destruction. No one knew what truly happened to the humans, the creatures that had once spread across their world, reached for the stars, and finally destroyed themselves. Wars, environmental collapse, and internal strife had all contributed to their downfall, leaving behind only ruins and the distant echoes of their achievements. The planet's cities had crumbled long ago, their monuments eroded by the relentless passage of time, leaving nothing but the barren soil and ancient ruins to speak of their once great civilization. But even in the darkest corners of space, among the stars that humans had once hoped to conquer, there were whispers, strange readings that no one could explain, unusual fluctuations in energy that seemed to come from the dead planet. Something had awoken from the depths of Earth's forgotten history. And somehow, someway, a mysterious presence had begun to draw attention once again, attracting the curiosity of beings who had long since forgotten the meaning of humanity. An elite group of explorers, the highest order of the Galactic Union, had long been the keepers of ancient secrets. They had uncovered ruins across countless worlds, from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to the closest stars. Their task was to preserve knowledge, to ensure the lessons of the past weren't forgotten by those who lived in the present. And when the first signals from Earth were detected, the Council had reacted swiftly, eager to investigate the source of these strange phenomena. Earth had always been a place of myth, of speculation, a forbidden world. But no one had ever expected it to resurface until now. The explorers arrived in a sleek, advanced ship that shimmered in the void. Its design was a combination of technology and organic material, sleek but alive with subtle, shifting patterns that defied human understanding. The ship's crew, a mixture of species from various worlds, sat in silence as they approached the remnants of Earth. The atmosphere was thick with tension, uncertainty, and the weight of history. None of them had ever stepped foot on Earth, and none of them had any idea what awaited them there. All they knew was that the signals had intensified in recent days, and they were now impossible to ignore. The surface of Earth appeared as a patchwork of brown, gray, and green, a planet that had once been lush and vibrant, but had now fallen into a silent slumber. There were no cities to be seen, no signs of life, just remnants of what had once been. The great oceans that had once covered the majority of the planet's surface were now scarred, their depths abandoned and untapped. The sky was a dull, muted blue, a haze that barely let through the faintest light from the distant sun. The planet had become a monument to the past, a place of death and decay, far from the eyes of the galaxy. "We are here." The captain's voice broke the silence. His species, a rare and revered form of ancient beings, had long ago given up their physical form and existed in a state of pure consciousness. But he had once been a human, his lineage surviving through countless generations. The captain had been chosen to lead this mission, for the Council trusted him to understand what Earth had once been. He was, after all, the only one among them who could possibly understand the significance of what they were about to discover. "Prepare for descent," he said calmly, his voice holding a note of solemnity. "This is uncharted territory for all of us. We must be prepared for anything." As the ship descended toward Earth's surface, the crew studied their instruments carefully. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered before. Energy fluctuations coursed through the air, but they were irregular, chaotic, almost as if the planet itself was rejecting their presence. Yet, despite the strange disturbances, they pushed forward. They had no choice. They had been sent to find out what had truly happened to the humans, and whether their extinction had been a tragedy or something far darker. The ship touched down gently, its landing gear settling onto the cracked and scarred surface of Earth. The crew moved quickly, stepping out onto the barren ground. The air was cold, but breathable. Their boots crunched against the dust and debris of a world long forgotten. The explorers surveyed the landscape, their eyes scanning the horizon. There was no sign of life, no movement. Just the eerie stillness that comes with the passage of time. Yet, something in the air, something in the silence felt wrong. They could sense it, even though they couldn't explain why. The captain, his mind already processing the strange readings from the ship's sensors, led the way as they ventured further into the landscape. The ground was littered with remnants of the past, crushed stone, twisted metal, and fragments of forgotten machines. Signs of a once thriving civilization were scattered across the land, as though some ancient battle had been fought here, and everything had been left to decay in the wake of that conflict. The crew stopped in their tracks when they reached a clearing, where a massive structure loomed before them. A building, partially collapsed but still standing in defiance of time. It was a tower of sorts, stretching toward the sky, its shape alien and geometric in design. It looked as though it had been built with the intent to endure for millennia, but the erosion of centuries had taken its toll. Still it stood. The tower, like the planet itself, was a testament to the stubbornness of humanity, to their ambition and their failure. This place, it's more intact than the rest, the captain said, his voice filled with wonder and disbelief. Let's go inside. The explorers moved cautiously toward the tower, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they entered, they found themselves in a cavernous room filled with strange symbols that none of them recognized. The walls were covered in alien designs, intricately carved into the stone. But one symbol, in particular, caught their attention. It was emblazoned in the center of the room, larger than the others, and it seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible glow. The captain studied it for a moment before speaking. This is human. These symbols, they're from Earth. But these aren't just carvings. They're a warning. A low hum suddenly filled the air, vibrating through the walls and the floor beneath their feet. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The tower wasn't just a relic. It was alive. I don't understand, the captain muttered, his hand resting on the symbol. How is this possible? The hum grew louder, more insistent. And then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath them. The walls of the tower shifted, and a deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber. It wasn't a language that any of them recognized, but they all felt the weight of the words. You dare to return, in the flesh? The voice rumbled, its tone filled with ancient fury. The explorers froze, their hearts racing in their chests. The voice seemed to vibrate in the very air around them, as if it was coming from all directions at once. They had expected mysteries, but not this. Not something alive. Not something sentient. The captain stepped back, his eyes widening. We have returned to a place long forgotten. But Earth is not empty. Someone still lingers here. And then, a figure appeared. The figure that appeared before the explorers was nothing like any being they had ever encountered. Tall and humanoid. Its shape was reminiscent of a human, but it was far more imposing. Its body was composed of translucent, shimmering material that seemed to warp and shift with the faint glow of the chamber. Its eyes, if they could even be called that, were dark voids, swirling with a strange energy that sent chills down the spines of those who gazed into them. There was something hauntingly ancient about it, a presence that felt both familiar and alien, as though it had been standing in that very room for eons, waiting for someone to come. The explorers instinctively took a step back, their weapons drawn, but the figure didn't move. Instead, it remained still, its gaze fixed upon them. The hum in the air intensified, vibrating the very fabric of the tower. It was as if the figure itself was a living manifestation of Earth's forgotten past, an entity tied to the very soul of the planet. For a long moment, no one dared to speak. The air was thick with tension, the voice of the figure still lingering in their minds. The captain, his voice low and cautious, stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked, his words carrying a weight of reverence. "Why are you here?" The figure did not respond immediately. Instead, its form rippled as if it were analyzing the captain, studying him with an intelligence far beyond what they could comprehend. Finally, it spoke, its voice deep and resonant, echoing in the very core of their beings. "I am the last of the Watchers," the figure said, its voice reverberating with an ancient power. "I have waited for eons for one to come. The humans, They left their mark on this world, but they did not leave it in peace. They awakened something. Something that should never have been. The captain's heart skipped a beat. The humans? The Watcher referred to them as if they were something more than a dead race. The humans are? Gone. They've been extinct for centuries. What do you mean by they awakened something? The figure's dark, swirling eyes narrowed, as if it were considering how much to reveal. Then, in a voice that was tinged with sorrow, it continued. Before the humans were lost, they created a force and entity capable of reshaping the very fabric of existence. It was a weapon, an abomination. It was never meant to be. But the humans, they could not resist the temptation of ultimate power. They triggered it, and in doing so, they sealed their fate. The crew exchanged confused and concerned glances. The captain, still gripped by a sense of unease, stepped closer to the figure. What happened to this weapon? Where is it now? The Watcher's eyes dimmed, and a low, resonant sound emanated from its body, almost like a mourning sigh. It sleeps beneath this world, beneath the ruins of what once was. It has waited patiently through the destruction of the humans and the decay of their civilization. But its time is near. It will rise again. The captain, now fully aware of the gravity of their situation, turned to his crew. The uncertainty in their eyes was palpable. They had come here to uncover the mystery of Earth's fall, but this was something far greater than any of them had anticipated. The Watcher's gaze fell upon the captain, its form shimmering in the dim light. "You do not understand," it said, its voice shifting, deepening with the weight of inevitability. "The humans were never truly gone. They live on in this place, and they have awakened the very thing they sought to control." A long, agonizing silence filled the room. The captain's thoughts were a whirlwind as he processed the Watcher's words. Could it be true? Could humanity have left behind something so powerful, so dangerous, that it was still capable of affecting the universe even after their extinction? "Then what do we do?" one of the explorers asked, his voice cracking as he addressed the Watcher. "How do we stop it?" The Watcher tilted its head slightly, as if considering this question. "You cannot stop it. You have already set the course. You have awoken it, just as the humans did. All you can do now is choose. Will you help it rise, or will you stand against it?" The words hit like a blow. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening with a sense of dread that made it hard to breathe. There was no escaping the magnitude of what they had unleashed. The Watcher was right there, mere presence on Earth. Their discovery of the tower had triggered something. But they were too late. The weapon, or whatever it was stirring, and the universe would soon know its power. The captain's voice was resolute, even as fear and uncertainty gripped him. "What is this weapon? What does it do?" The Watcher's form seemed to flicker, its body shifting as it spoke. "It is the core of the Earth, the humans' creation, the one thing they built to transcend death, to reshape reality itself. The weapon is not just of Earth, but of all worlds. It is capable of altering the very laws of existence, creating, destroying, bending time, and rewriting history." The words hung in the air like a dark omen. The captain's mind raced. To have such power, it was unfathomable. And yet, the Watcher's words were clear. They had no choice now but to face whatever was rising beneath them. With a deep breath, the captain turned to his crew. "We need to find this weapon before it finds us. We need to know how to control it or how to stop it." But the Watcher's voice cut through the tension. "There is no controlling it, human. Only choosing." Chapter 2, The Awakening. The crew gathered around a makeshift table inside the ship, their faces pale, their minds grappling with the overwhelming knowledge they had just uncovered. The Watcher had warned them that there was no turning back, that they had already triggered the awakening of the weapon beneath the ruins of Earth. But even now, as they sat in the dimly lit room, they were unsure of what to do next. The captain, though shaken, maintained his composure. The Watcher was clear. "Whatever we've awoken, it's not just a weapon. It's something that can rewrite reality itself. If we don't stop it, the entire galaxy could be at risk." One of the explorers, a Zorian named Nissa, spoke up, her voice steady despite the tension. "But how do we stop something like that? We don't even know what it is yet. We have no idea where it's hiding." The captain looked at the map of Earth's surface that had been projected on the table. The Watcher had given them a rough location, a vast, ancient structure buried deep beneath the planet's surface. But that was all. They were going blind into an unknown war against a power far greater than anything they had ever faced. "I say we go to that structure," the captain said, his voice firm. "It's our only option. We find the weapon and stop it, no matter what it takes." "But how?" Nissa asked, her voice a little more frantic now. "The Watcher said we've already triggered it. What if it's already too late? What if it's already awake and waiting for us?" The captain clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing with determination. "Then we make sure it doesn't get any stronger. We go in, we find it, and we end this before it ends us." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but they knew the captain was right. They had no choice. The fate of the galaxy, and perhaps the very fabric of reality, rested in their hands now. They were not the heroes of this story, but they could still be the ones who stopped the destruction. And with that, they began their descent into the heart of Earth toward the unknown, where a weapon of unimaginable power lay dormant, waiting to be unleashed. The crew moved quickly, their preparations made in tense silence. They knew time was not on their side. Every moment that passed felt like an eternity, and the weight of the task ahead grew heavier with every step. The captain stood at the front, his eyes focused on the massive structure that loomed ahead on Earth's surface. It was a crumbling ruin, surrounded by the twisted remnants of old cities once grand, now buried in dust. But despite its decayed appearance, there was something undeniably powerful about the place. It was as if the very ground beneath their feet pulsed with the energy of an ancient force waiting to be awakened. "Ready?" the captain asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. His crew nodded grimly, weapons in hand, as they prepared to descend into the heart of the ruin. The ancient structure stretched upward, its towering spires cutting through the sky like the skeletal remains of a dead giant. The air around them was thick with a strange charge, the same feeling they had experienced when they first entered the ruined tower, the sense that something was watching them, waiting for them to make a move. The ground beneath them rumbled slightly, as if the planet itself were reacting to their presence. The captain took the lead, stepping forward into the structure's main entrance, his boots echoing loudly against the stone floor. His breath came in short, controlled bursts, but there was no turning back now. The others followed closely behind, their steps cautious but purposeful. The air inside the structure was cold, stale, and smelled faintly of decay, but there was an undeniable hum of energy that filled the space, a constant, low vibration that seemed to grow louder with each step they took deeper into the bowels of the ruin. The walls of the structure were covered in intricate carvings, alien symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, eerie light. As they moved further in, the crew began to notice something strange. The walls themselves seemed to shift, as though the structure was alive, constantly changing, adapting. There were no clear paths or hallways, just winding corridors, chambers, and chambers within chambers, each one more mysterious than the last. "We're getting closer," the captain said, his voice barely above a whisper as he examined the walls around them. His fingers brushed against the carvings, and a shock ran through him, as if the walls themselves were responding to his touch. Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled violently, throwing the crew off balance. A massive rumbling sound echoed throughout the structure, the walls shaking as if the entire ruin had just come alive. The captain steadied himself, his hand tightening around his weapon. "What the hell was that?" one of the explorers, a Vorian named Zara, asked, her voice laced with fear. Before anyone could respond, a blinding light filled the room, coming from the very heart of the structure. The crew instinctively raised their weapons, but the light was not threatening. Instead, it seemed to beckon them forward. The captain, despite the overwhelming sense of dread that washed over him, stepped toward the light. "There's no turning back," he said. "We have to see this through." As they moved closer to the source of the light, the space around them shifted once again. The walls parted, and they found themselves standing in a vast, open chamber. At the center of the room stood a towering structure, an enormous, pulsating core, surrounded by a field of energy that crackled and hummed like the heartbeat of the planet itself. "This is it," the captain said, awe and fear in his voice. "This is what the humans created. This is the weapon." The core seemed to resonate with an almost malevolent energy, its presence undeniable and overwhelming. The air was thick with the sense that something ancient and powerful was stirring, awakening from a long slumber. The energy around them fluctuated, sending shock waves through the room. The crew stepped back, their weapons raised, but they knew that there was nothing they could do to stop what was happening. "It's alive," Zara whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's been waiting for us." The captain's eyes narrowed. "We need to shut it down. Now." He turned to the rest of the crew. "Find a way to deactivate this thing. If we don't, it'll be the end of everything." But as they moved toward the core, the ground beneath them trembled once more. The walls began to shift, the symbols on the walls glowing brighter, more intense. The light from the core flickered, growing stronger, as if feeding off the energy in the room. "Captain," Zara's voice was strained, full of dread. It's not going to let us leave." The realization hit the captain like a gut punch. The weapon, the very thing they had come to shut down, was alive, and it had no intention of letting them destroy it. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was not the Watcher's voice, but something much darker, far more ancient. "Welcome, travelers," the voice said, its tone smooth, yet filled with an eerie power. "You have awakened me, as the humans once did. But unlike them, you are not here to control me. You are here to serve me." The voice's words reverberated through their minds, causing a chill to run down their spines. The crew's hands tightened on their weapons, but they knew there was no point. The weapon was too powerful, too advanced. They had already lost the battle. We need to get out of here," Zara said, her voice breaking. "Now." The captain turned, his mind racing, but the chamber's doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The core's light grew brighter, its energy pulsing with an intensity that made the air crackle with static. The ground beneath them began to shake violently, and they were thrown to the floor. "Captain," shouted one of the explorers. "We have to stop it. We have to destroy it now." The captain scrambled to his feet, his mind desperately searching for a way out. But it was already too late. The weapon had already begun to awaken fully, and it was far beyond anything they had imagined. And as the power of the weapon surged, the captain realized the terrible truth. The humans had not just created a weapon. They had created something that could change the very fabric of existence. And now, it was in their hands. Chapter 3. The Choice. The ship had been hovering above Earth's surface for hours now, its crew utterly silent, their minds lost in the horrors they had witnessed. The remnants of the ancient weapon were still fresh in their minds, its pulsing energy, the terrifying voice that had echoed through their minds. Nothing in the galaxy had prepared them for the reality of what they had just discovered. The captain paced back and forth on the bridge of the ship, his eyes locked on the screen. His fingers traced the map of the planet's surface, trying to find a way to make sense of what had happened. The ancient structure, the energy field, the weapon, it was all so much more than they had bargained for. And now, they had to face the consequences. "We need to return to the council," the captain said, his voice steady but filled with an underlying frustration. "We need to warn them about what we've found." Zara, who had been silent for much of the journey, spoke up. "And what are we supposed to tell them? That humanity's extinction was only the beginning? That the weapon they created is now a living entity?" The captain paused, his hand resting on the console. "We tell them the truth. We tell them everything." But deep down, he knew it was too late. They had awoken something that could not be controlled. The weapon was far beyond their understanding, and its power was limitless. The galaxy would never be the same again. The crew sat in uneasy silence, the weight of their discovery settling heavily in the small confines of their ship. The captain, still pacing, knew that there was no turning back now. They had unwittingly triggered the awakening of something ancient, something capable of reshaping reality itself, and it was not just a relic, it was still alive, still growing in power. Even as the ship hummed quietly around them, the memories of the underground structure, the pulsing energy of the core, and the that voice echoed in their minds. The captain glanced at the view screen, where Earth loomed below, its surface scarred, barren, and cold. The remnants of humanity's great empire were barely visible now, hidden beneath miles of dust and decay. Earth had once been the cradle of a thriving civilization, but now it was nothing more than a tomb, a final resting place for the human race and the weapon they had created. But even in death, humanity had left behind something dangerous, something powerful that no one had anticipated. How do we stop it? Nissa's voice broke through the heavy silence. She was sitting at one of the consoles, her fingers moving over the data readouts, trying to make sense of the situation. We've tried everything. We can't even get close to the core without it fighting back. There's no way to disable it without triggering some sort of cataclysm. The captain stopped pacing and walked over to the console. He stared at the readings, but the truth was, he already knew the answer. They had no chance of defeating the weapon using conventional methods. Its energy was too powerful, its force too deeply ingrained in the very fabric of Earth. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an entity, a living, breathing part of the planet's core. Maybe we don't stop it, the captain muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Maybe we have to control it. A hushed silence fell over the crew. Nissa looked up, eyes wide. Control it? Are you serious? We can't control that thing. The Watcher said it was beyond anyone's understanding. The humans couldn't control it. What makes you think we can? The captain's gaze hardened as he turned away from the console. We're not here to destroy everything, Nissa. If we destroy the weapon, Earth will collapse. The weapon is embedded in the planet's core, it's tied to everything. If we destroy it, we destroy this world, too. Zara, who had been silent up until now, spoke with a voice laced with doubt. So what? We just leave it be? Let it awaken and wreak havoc on the galaxy? No, the captain said, his voice sharp and clear. We don't leave it. We find a way to live with it. The weapon, it's a part of this world, and if we can control it, we might have a chance at keeping it from affecting the rest of the galaxy. We'll need to work with it, understand it. It's the only way forward. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but none of them spoke. Deep down, they knew he was right. Their options were limited. If they couldn't control the weapon, then no one could. I'm sending a signal to the council, the captain said, his voice filled with resolve. We'll need reinforcements. If we're going to control this thing, we need the resources, the knowledge of every civilization that has dealt with such power. We can't face this alone. Zara nodded grimly. And what if they want to destroy it? What if they see it as a threat? The captain turned to face her. Then we'll fight to protect it. We'll fight to control it. And we'll make sure no one else makes the same mistake humanity did. The decision had been made. There was no going back now. The crew spent the next few hours preparing their next steps. They sent a message to the Galactic Council, alerting them to the situation on Earth and requesting the expertise and resources necessary to understand and control the weapon. It was a dangerous gamble, but the captain knew that they had no other choice. As the message transmitted through the stars, the ship's crew took a moment to gather their thoughts, unsure of what awaited them next. But even as they waited for the council's response, the hum of the weapon beneath Earth's surface grew louder. They could feel that the weapon was not dormant. It was awake. And now, it knew they were there. Chapter 4, The Endgame. The waiting was the hardest part. Days passed in tense silence as the crew of the ship remained in orbit above Earth, watching as the signal to the Galactic Council slowly made its way across the vast distances of space. They had done everything they could to prepare, gathering data, analyzing the weapon's energy fluctuations, and trying to predict its movements. But each time they thought they understood it, the weapon shifted, its power seemingly infinite, its behavior unpredictable. It wasn't long before the response came. The Galactic Council had mobilized, and reinforcements were on the way. A team of experts, engineers, and strategists would arrive within the week. But even as they prepared for their arrival, the captain couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Earth, the weapon, and the fate of the galaxy were inextricably linked, and it seemed as though the weapon was becoming more active with every passing moment. And then, one evening, the ship's alarms blared to life. The captain bolted upright from his seat, his heart racing as the flashing lights filled the bridge. "Report," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Zara, who had been monitoring the weapon's energy levels, quickly scanned the data. It's increasing. The energy output's off the charts. The weapon is expanding. It's not just Earth it's affecting anymore. It's starting to affect the surrounding planets. The captain's face went pale. The weapon's influence is spreading. Not just influence, Zara said, her voice filled with fear. It's a full-scale activation. The weapon is no longer just tied to Earth. It's pulling in other systems, other planets. It's rewriting the fabric of space itself. The crew exchanged horrified glances. The weapon's influence had never been intended to extend beyond Earth, but now it seemed to be reaching out, distorting reality, warping the fabric of the galaxy. "We have no choice," the captain said, his voice shaking with the weight of what had to be done. "We have to go down to the surface. We have to confront it before it spreads beyond our control." The ship's engines roared to life as the crew made their way toward Earth's surface. They had no time to wait for reinforcements. The weapon was already too powerful, and its influence was spreading faster than they could respond. They had to act now, before it was too late. As the ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, the captain took one last look at the planet below. It was both beautiful and terrifying, its surface swirling with an unnatural energy, its landscape torn and fractured by the weapon's grip. The humans, the creators of this abomination, were long gone, but their legacy remained, and it was up to them to stop it. The captain's voice was steady as he gave the final command. "Prepare for descent. We end this now." The crew descended into the depths of the ancient structure, their weapons drawn, their resolve unwavering. The energy in the air was thick, and the hum of the weapon was deafening. They had come here to control it, to understand it, but now, as they stood before the core once more, they knew that there was only one way to stop it. It was time to make the ultimate choice. The captain turned to his crew. "We don't destroy it. We don't let it consume everything. We'll take control of it, make it our own, and we'll make sure this never happens again." And with that, they stepped forward, their weapons raised, their hearts set on saving the galaxy from the fate that had once claimed the human race. The endgame had begun, and the weapon, like the humans before it, would either rise or fall. The choice was theirs.